First of all, how are you all? How's it all going? You have a bit of a go round and a bit of a check-in. No funny sheep today. But we'll just do a go round and just say, how are you feeling and what's going on at the moment, and where are you with your learning materials and what's coming up for you generally within that. So I'll start just directly to my right with Catherine. Catherine, how are you doing?
Right, hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm a bit sort of
Preoccupied by a small child.
yeah, I'm a bit distracted. So where am I with it? I'm enjoying it, and I'm kind of excited to be getting to the point of thinking about like plants to grow. Although all the kind of background has definitely been, valuable to like think about sun and water and soil and all of that. But I'm really excited about growing plants. So yeah, kind of excited to be getting onto that. Yeah, that's where I am, I'd say.
Well, thank you. Rachel? I'm just going in order around the screen. So for me.
Yeah, I am good, thanks. I am really sort of also enjoying it. I think like I'm a bit, some of it feels like a bit overwhelming in the sense of like trying to consider like all the principles and everything. I find myself getting more sort of thinking about like techniques and stuff, and it, like going down the rabbit hole of square foot gardening and things like that. Because I don't know, because it is quite big picture at the beginning, isn't it? And it feels like, but I really enjoyed the exercise of looking at your space, imagining what it was like 100 years or like before humans touched it, and what it would, because it just makes you think about your space in a completely different context without anything being there. Other than that, yeah, I'm really good. I'm also excited about choosing what to actually grow. So
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Sam, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Although it's been rather wet here, so not been out and about as much as might otherwise have been. But yes, also kind of working through module 2 and really enjoying some of the videos. Actually, I did put on to the chat, if I did it correctly, any sort of additional tips about kind of working with slugs and stales. I really enjoyed that video in particular, the one about sort of how you should kind of almost use them as a signal as to whether you're getting things right, rather than necessarily as a pest to battle and that sort of thing. So yeah, I found lots of videos really interesting. In terms of planning the space, making a bit of progress, sort of starting to think about planting also, and what the kind of things you might put there and what might go well together and work in that space, given the kind of, in particular, the sun and when it gets sun and when it doesn't get sun. It's not sort of it gets some sun, but it's not the sunniest spot. So yeah, but really enjoying getting stuck in and so just sort of trying to think about the principles as we go through it. But yeah, like you say, Rachel, it can be a bit daunting trying to kind of integrate all of that.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess it's something about not overthinking it, but making sure that you've got all the, there's no point in putting a plant in that's needs 8 hours of sunshine when you've only got 4. So yeah, that kind of thing. Zoe, hello. Can't hear you for some reason. You've unmuted. Can't hear you. Okay, I think you might have a.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, that's just about, yeah.
This must be broken. Anyway.
Okay.
Right, since starting this course, my work has mushroomed, so I'm now doing 2 or 3 more community gardens. So I'm spreading it over these gardens, and it's been very useful. But also in that, like Sam said, I've had a lot of we've had flooding around here, so actually doing these exercises during a flood has been a real eye-opener. And it's made me think about climate change and resilience, because normally where I am, we don't get flooding on this sort of scale. And so it makes me think we've gone from a drought one year to flooding the next year. So how do we think about planting when this is happening? So how can you make your garden resilient to change that keeps changing, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do see exactly what you mean. Yeah, that's quite challenging. Remind me where you are in the country, Zoe.
I'm in Lincolnshire.
Lincolnshire. You've had flooding around Lincolnshire as well.
Yeah, which is really unusual. Normally it doesn't really. I'm used to Oxfordshire where it floods all the time, so I'm sort of okay with that. But in Lincolnshire, I'm not used to it flooding as much, so it's interesting.
There's something there about sort of resilience and regardless of the weather. Kind of, getting more into adaptation, I suppose. Unfortunately, Louise, hello. How are you this evening?
There you are, got my microphone off at last. Yeah, I'm fine. I've got a lot of work on at the moment on my day job, so yeah, trying to balance things out. But I was down at the plot at the weekend and spent some time looking at the overgrown part, which is mostly like where those fruit bushes are and trees that I mentioned in and trying to think how I can think about some of those principles, so I'm not kind of getting bogged down with it being neat and tidy, but thinking of it as space where, there's a lot of like empty ground that's taken over by lots of brambles and bindweed, and thinking of how I can maybe be less focused on wrestling with them, but more letting some be as they are, but also kind of thinking of what other plants I can put in there that are maybe more like that would thrive there and take them over. And so and also that I can use that as a place to observe. And I was thinking there's when we're on the plot, loads of people are coming over to each other's plots, and that's really nice. And we'll often go in and say, look at this, I'm growing this. And I thought it'd be quite nice if it was almost like a little trail. So rather than taking somebody over to a bed, which is what normally happens, and like, look at my cabbages, but kind of, come over to where my sort of small fruit area is, and kind of sort of interact with it in a different way, so that people can see their plots also in a different way. Because I think there is, I don't know, sometimes maybe on allotment sites, there's a lot about people feel like they want to be kind of neat and tidy and have their beds and all their veg in order. And mine doesn't look like that. Sometimes I might get a little bit of criticism for that. So I'm thinking about how I can apply it in a way to help others learn too, and for myself to learn as well about trying to work with that wild space at the back where I'm trying to grow some fruit trees. So yeah.
It's a little bit of that using the edges and valuing the marginal thing right there. But I think allotments are tricky. People often come up against the allotment committee when they're trying to do something a bit different with their plot, and you end up in this.
Well, I'm on the committee, much to my sins, but like they're a really good committee. So we're going to start a nature club. So I've enrolled some nature ambassadors. We've got a couple of keen bird watchers and stuff on the plot. So I'm enrolling them to help try and be nature ambassadors, and to use some of these principles as well. Because I think for me, I've always known about permaculture, but I'd not really fully understood like some of those principles, what they mean, and like there's a lot of them. So again, somebody was just saying it's quite overwhelming, and I do feel that at times, but the videos and that on this course are brilliant. And some of the reports, like I've downloaded or noted the websites, I think some great stuff on there. So yeah, it's probably a lot to take in at the moment, but a lot of things to keep in your back pocket to read and to kind of catch up on as well as you want to like learn more after the course. So yeah, really great.
Brilliant. Okay, Sarah, how are you doing this evening? And how's it going for you?
I'm good. Thanks. Similarly to Zoe, I was thinking about resilience because we also had flooding in my area recently and a big like storm. So just trying to make the space more resilient. Because like some of the stuff I planted just like came off the ground, and then there was just water logging in certain beds, all of that. So yeah, thinking about that. And then also kind of thinking about how, I guess it's after when we collect stuff, but because I'm harvesting some of the leftover seeds that I had from this year and kind of trying to figure out how to become more and more independent with my, like kind of making a seed bank, I guess. And trying to, but this I really don't know much about, like seed collection and how to take care of them and all of that. So that is all.
Maybe we should do that in the next session, which will be the last session, but do a bit on seed saving. My living room has just been covered in beans. Beans occupying every surface and getting dried out. And I've got sort of big envelope full of, that's my Blauhilde purple bean seeds. This has been very productive this year, super productive. Beans, those ones. Brilliant. Anne, hello. Your son.
Hi. Thank you. I've gotten tongue-tied now. I'm feeling very ecstatic today because I started the patch that I'm sort of going to be planning with 3 years ago when we moved into this place where and there was a really lovely veg patch, but and I really thought with reduced work and I could really get to grips with growing food, but the week we moved in, I got COVID pre-vaccination, and then I've been a bit dogged with long COVID, so my executive function is a bit up the creek. So when I did the first permaculture course, it was really appropriate because it was all about slow solutions and observation, so it really accounts for it's really helped in terms of lack of energy and not being able to do things quickly and just having to take time and watch stuff. And so it's just been absolutely perfect for this time in my life. And this again is fabulous because I mean Rachel was saying about the square foot gardening, which is what I'm looking at for my patch because I've got quite a few raised beds, and with when you've got low energy, if you've got just a little area and you just think, right, I've just got to sort that out, that might be it for the energy that day, and it's absolutely brilliant. So I'm trying to kind of get my head around doing that a bit more, and I have divided 2 of my beds up and planted for the winter with small areas. So I'll see how I go with that. But what I'm really ecstatic about today is for the third year running, I've tried to grow celeriac. And I harvested my first celeriac. The last 2 years I've had sort of, first of all, golf balls and then tennis balls. And this year I dug up my first one and it's like this. And I'm so utterly delighted. I've been sending pictures out to everybody. So yes, a good day. Thank you.
Well done. Was that outdoors?
Sorry?
The celeriac, was it outdoors? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in Scotland, you can only really grow big celeriac indoors. That's my experience anyway.
Right. Well, I've just been assuming I couldn't grow big celeriac, but I'm really pleased. I've got about another 8 that look about the same size. I'm really delighted.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. No, it's nice to have that success, isn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Paula, hiya. How you doing? Find the unmute buttons there somewhere.
Technical problems today, so I'm joining with my phone. I'm fine. I finally got some help. My mom finally flew to come help me with the baby, so I feel like a new person. So I feel good. And I have been reading the module 2 as well, and as many starting to think about what I would plant, or I really knew what I want to plant, but what is going to work in my space and how I'm going to organize it. So my whole kind of project with the garden is to have some kind of food forest with the different layers. And right now I'm kind of working out my fruit guild. Or fruit tree guilds, just trying to figure out what to put underneath the trees and which perennials, because I want it to be low maintenance, so I want it to be mainly perennials, and so that's what I'm kind of excited and trying to work out. So I'm really looking forward to listening to your advice about companion planting. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, hopefully I can offer some advice about companion planting. I'm trying to I'd like to find a visual for it rather than just me talking. But it's actually quite difficult apart from looking at this massive chart on my wall. But anyway, we'll manage somehow. And finally, Prashant, are you there? Are you with us?
I'm on the train, and so I'm not too sure about the video.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I noticed that you were sort of coming and going a little bit, so your connection must be a bit dodgy if you're on the train.
I'm not putting it on it. The TC is here, so I need to get. Sorry.
No worries.
I need to go, but the TC is there. But I'm listening to you as best I can. Yeah.
Great. Got you. Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah,
Great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks. Hold on. I mean, he's gone. So, I don't know how many of you guys did the soil test on module 2. I have collected the soil in the 2 areas that I'm going to grow things. But I was just wondering if it is necessary to have the dishwasher soap powder, or any powder would do. Any, like a washing machine powder would do. That's one. And I've planted 2 bare root grapes in the raised bed. So that's all. And I also wanted to ask what's the what implication is there if my fig tree, which I planted on this year, has got figs, but they're not ripe, they're not ripening, they're just there. So I wanted to ask about that.
Just quickly on the soil, then. Yeah, it's you don't need the powder at all, actually. I mean, I didn't realize that link that I sent included in incorporating powder to it. You don't need that. Just the water will do fine. Assuming that's the one that's the link that I sent, isn't it? That weirdly said use dishwasher powder. I don't know why it said that. I've never seen a soil test that says that before. Not needed. Just the water.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess I can answer the one on figs really quickly as well before it turns into gardener's question time. But if you, these sessions are a bit like gardener's question time, I have to say. Yeah, it's really tricky to get figs ripening in the UK. You need a very sheltered south-facing kind of spot, and a lot of patience and a good summer. And yeah, it's not unheard of, but it depends on the variety. I don't know what variety you've got, but some are kind of earlier ripening. But because we have a kind of, the change of seasons very quickly, we can lose those figs and lose the kind of ripening period. So it's tricky. It's a tricky one to grow. In a nutshell, or a fig shell. Okay. I hope that's sort of helpful, but yeah, without knowing what variety you've got, it's a pretty difficult one to answer. Okay, so I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about the sort of fertilizer question, and using mulches and cover crops and green manures as a get-go kind of thing. So I've got a couple of kind of things that I can show you, but I guess first of all, who who first of all is sort of has a sort of composting system, or even better, a wormery? Has anybody got a wormery set up? Just put your hands up if you have. Yeah, that's great. So wormeries, I think, are brilliant for small spaces, because they're a kind of they're rodent proof if you set them up in the right kind of way. They're a really quick way of breaking down your kitchen waste, if you look after the worms correctly and treat them right, and feed them properly. And it's a super fast way of getting some really good nutrient rich compost and organic matter out the other end. I was visiting my friend in Liverpool recently. She's got a backyard about the same size as this office, and she was just so excited to be showing me like all the things that she had growing in containers, and especially her wormery, which was just brilliant. It was a kind of 3 boxes, with sort of the bedding, worm bedding in there, which can be sort of newspaper or straw if you can get a hold of it, sort of dry matter basically, and then the worms, which are usually, do people know the difference between one worm and another? So you get so many different types of worms, but the kind of compost worms, the kind of worms that you would normally get in a wormery, are a kind of tiger worms, or sort of red, sort of tiny red things basically. They're tiny reds, sort of red tiddlers, and you'll find them in sort of manure heaps, you'll find them in compost heaps, and if you're setting up a wormery system, then you'd need to bring them in to that system. They're not going to come automatically. If you've got a compost heap, they quite often just turn up, which is dead handy. But if you're getting a wormery system, you're going to have to find them in somebody else's compost heap, or you can buy them online, I believe. Yeah, and I'll show you a sort of a PDF that we use. And Propagate also has a video on how to make a wormery, which I'll send you a link to afterwards. It's my friend Jenny, sort of with a drill and some boxes and a sort of DIY styly. But yeah, it's a very, very effective way of processing your kitchen waste and organic matter in a small space, and still ending up with a really good nutrient-rich fertilizer at the end of it. Rachel, yes.
I just wanted to ask about, what do you do with them over winter? Like, are they all right just being outside when it's freezing cold?
I mean, in my experience, they're usually fine. They're generating quite a lot of heat themselves through the sort of composting process, through the process of breaking down organic matter. They're the sort of, the wormery is usually quite a warm space. But if you're worried, you could put a sort of layer of fleece over it, like horticultural fleece, a sort of thin white kind of fabric that's surprisingly insulative. Catherine.
I started reading about this and I just got really confused, because I read something that said that like the liquid that you get out is not fertilizer, it's something else. And that was a point where I just decided I got a bit lost and needed to ask for some help on this whole topic.
Yeah, you do need to drain the liquid off. It does have nutrient properties, but it's kind of wrong to assume that it's kind of like worm gold. It's the stuff that they're kind of producing in the boxes. That's the good stuff, and the sort of juice. Yeah, I think we used to think that it was like really high nutrients and a really good fertilizer, and it still could be. It's still good to sort of, water it down and use it as a liquid feed, but it's not as good as we kind of may have once thought it was.
And the stuff in the bins is more like a solid, like a compost, is it?
Yeah. Now there is a whole process of kind of using that kind of the stuff that the worms are created to make a sort of compost tea extraction, which is a huge sort of science and art in itself. It's a really difficult thing to do, because you've got to get temperatures right and airflow just right. It's you need quite a lot of space to do it in. Yeah, it's not just, if you sort of puts the sort of worm the compost into a bucket with water and do the fermenting process, it actually doesn't come out so well. Yeah, so it's quite a challenging process, but it's not impossible to do it in a small space. Zoe, got your hand up.
I've inherited a compost, which is it's very challenging in this one of these community gardens. It's quite a small compost, and they've put a massive load of bananas, not cut up or anything, and it's just bananas with loads of flies. And I look at it and think, what am I going to do with this? What would you recommend I do? It's not just bananas, but they've stuck, you know, a big pile on the top, and it's quite a small space where we have this compost. What would I do with those bananas?
It's a compost heap made up entirely out of bananas.
No, it's lots of different food wastes, and so I've inherited this, so they haven't really followed the rules of compost, so it's a bit of a mess. So I've got some of the compost out that I've used in some of the raised beds, but this wacky big splodging of bananas and banana peel, what do I do with it?
Is it a single compost bay?
Yeah, so there is nowhere where you normally, you know, like you turn and you move it to a different one. I don't have that option, so what do I do?
Could you get some buckets? This is what I think I would do based on what you've just told me. Get some buckets and just try and separate some of that banana out. And mix it up with some other organic matter, other kitchen waste, cardboard, straw, any kind of herbivore animal bedding, that kind of thing. Try and mix it separately in the buckets. What sort of quantity are we talking about? Like, it's quite, say, if you think, how would I say, it's quite a lot. I'd say two big boxes full of bananas, like completely sort of rotting and disgusting. And I mean, it will all break down, but it sounds like it needs a good amount of mixing up with other organic matter. So it's not ready. I can't put it in some raised, you know, like I've done some raised beds. I can't put it in there yet, can I? Underneath, it would just mess it, wouldn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I don't think people do. I mean, these people used to do this trenching thing, which again is, I think it's better to kind of make sure that you're processing compost. So obviously wormery in a small space, if you're lucky enough to have enough space for a good composting system, brilliant. But wormeries are ideal for small space. And actually, you know, I've got 10 acres here and I use a wormery. I think for that first stage of breaking down that raw kitchen waste, it's a wormery is like I said, rodent proof, which is a massive first step. You know, it's, you know what, you don't want rats, and that's a big problem in urban community gardens as well. That people complain about quite a lot is rodents. So the wormery kind of system is ideal for breaking down sort of first stage organic or sort of kitchen waste, which if you had a wormery, you could start putting the bananas through that. The wormers would probably love it. But yeah, because I'm used to a big community garden and we don't have much kitchen waste. It's more garden waste, whereas this one is a lot about kitchen waste. So it's a whole new ball game, really. So you reckon a wormery is better than doing it the sort of composty way? You've got more control over it. And then if you've got the space, your second stage can be taking that kind of lovely stuff that the worms are created and putting them through a compost system with other food waste. If you're working with a very small space, you can take the lovely stuff that the worms have created and apply it straight to your planters. But if you're lucky enough to have a bigger space, then you can mix that up with the other sort of compost that you're creating. Louise, you've got your hand up, and Catherine, you did have your hand up, you put it down, so we'll go Louise first and then
my question.
Back. Okay. I thought I might have done. Louise,
I'm just going to recommend a wormery because it was one of the first things I bought when I came to my new house, because I thought I'd like to give a new house to some worms. So I got a wormery. So I've had it like 9 years. So it's been doing
Wow.
really well, and I've not replenished the worms. There's been a couple of times where I thought I'd lost them, but they've come back. So,
Tell us
and
about it.
they're not protected. They're now, I used to have it by the kitchen door, but now the last 4 years, I actually thought, actually, I want to see it in my garden next to this. I've got like a 1 meter square raised bed in my garden at home, which is mostly flowers and different things. But there I grow, like this year I grew tomatoes that were taken from side cuttings from my tomatoes in the polytunnel in the allotment. And I use the wormery compost to keep that bed going every year. And then we take the top layer off and put that on and use that for the bottom one. And so I just wanted to give a real positive for wormeries, because it's great because it fills up my 1 meter square bed at home every year. And it's, yeah, if you don't need to look after them too much. So, because they might have been going for ages. So yeah, don't worry about it too much. But you don't want to drown them, because that's nearly happened a couple of times. But because I've put it near a wall now, in my garden, it's sheltered by some of the bushes. And I think also it just gives it a little bit of warmth, so it's more sheltered. But I was just say on the compost bin, which I've got one at the allotment, is I used to use loads of card and like waste paper in it, and that seems to like really attract the worms. It's like almost like a magnet to them. Like if I leave some on, after about a month, if I can like, sometimes pull it up, it's got tons of worms on it, and that makes me really happy. So yeah.
And did you,
Love worms.
Louise, did you get the worms for your wormery from your allotment compost?
No, I didn't
No.
dare, because we have so much mare's tail at the allotment. So so nothing. I don't even wear my boots from the allotment in my garden at home. No way, just in case. But I know when I bought the wormery, it came with the starter kit. So it came with like the wood shavings, and then the worms were in a little bag, and so yeah. So I got it that way.
And what kind of wormery is it? Does it have a brand?
I can't remember. It's so long ago now that I can't remember what the brand was. But
Okay.
if I find it, I'll let you know.
Well, okay, I'm gonna attempt to screen share. We've got Anne. Let's go back in. Gonna attempt to screen share. See if this works from my new computer. And I'll just show you. If I can make it go full screen at the same time, that'd be nice. Okay, so you should be able to see this lovely hand-drawn image. Can I make it full screen? Has that gone full screen for you? Yes, no? Yeah, Catherine says yes. Okay, so I can see Catherine. That's great. Great. So I can share this as a resource afterwards. But this is I'm going to make this disappear in the background there. This is a kind of handout that we use in Propagate on gardening workshops. Yeah, and it's really sweet. It's because it's hand drawn, and everyone likes a nice, cute hand drawn thing. And it's how to make your own wormery. So you don't need to buy one from any brands, although it doesn't come with the starter kit of worms. So you will still need to find somebody's compost heap with worms, ideally somebody that doesn't have mare's tail. You definitely don't want that. Okay, so as we've said here, wormeries are great for fast composting of food waste, and they are super fast. You treat them right, they're super quick. So there is a kind of but what we know now is that it's not a very strong liquid plant food. It is a liquid plant food, but it shouldn't be seen as the sort of shiny gold that we think it was, like I said. But what you can use is 3 plastic boxes. So maybe you've got a scrap store near you, like a surplus art materials kind of place. But what we're talking about is plastic storage boxes with a lid, the kinds that stack on top of each other, ideally. You're also going to want a water butt tap, which you can get from most DIY stores like B&Q or Homebase. Newspaper and cardboard to get it started. Oh, here we've got the Latin name, look. And 250 grams of worms, ideally this variety, Dendrobenus, available from fishing shops apparently, or friends' wormeries and compost heaps. And in addition to that, you're going to need a drill, hand drill, and various attachments. Okay, so step one, and like I said, we've got a video for this as well. It's pretty cool. So step one is that you kind of drill lots of tiny holes around the top of the box to allow ventilation. You do not want to suffocate your worms. That would be bad. And it has been done as well. So this is the inside of the box. It's a 3D image. This has not got it's not this has got a lid, hasn't got a lid in it. Well, yeah, it has got a lid in it, sorry. Because the lid then goes on top of the other box, so to speak. Yeah, so you've got holes around the top here, and holes in the lids. And the holes in the lid are going to allow the worms to kind of wiggle through to the next layer, kind of thing, when you put the second box on top. But you'll start with just the one box. And yeah, you want to drill lots of, with a slightly bigger drill bit, holes for the worms to sort of get in between the lids and the next box above, because most wormeries will stack on top of each other. So you'll also want some sort of boring hole to make a hole for your sort of water butt tap. Again, quite straightforward. The whole thing needs to sit slightly raised so that the tap isn't touching the ground as well. There should be no holes in the base whatsoever, no holes in the base. The holes all around the top and in the lids itself. Yeah, and as Louise was saying there, compost, newspaper and cards are great for kind of, you know, absorbing moisture, but also attracting more worms. Okay, so you've, assuming, goes back up here, that you've drilled the holes in the top and you've drilled holes in the lid and you've made holes in the bottom of the next box, not the bottom of your original box, then you want to start stacking them. So this is the bottom box here. It's got no holes in the bottom, remember. We've got some ventilation holes here. We've got ventilation, then there's a lid in between the two with the exit holes so the worms can come and go between the different layers. We've got ventilation holes in the second box, we've got ventilation holes in the third box, and we've got ventilation holes in the top. So you want to create your worm bedding, first of all, with lots of cardboard and newspaper and that kind of thing, and a little bit of soil or compost to get it all started. It's really good to put in there. Put the worms in and start adding your feed. So your feed should be the kitchen waste and cardboard. So mixture of things like egg boxes and toilet rolls, the kind of things that you would normally put into a compost heap, along with your any kind of kitchen waste, but try and make sure it's cut up quite small. They can process bigger stuff, but it's kind of handy for them to have it cut up quite small. Yeah, and the worms will kind of, you can tell whether they're breeding or not. Put a sheet of cardboard on top of them so they can't escape, otherwise they will start disappearing up through these holes. They're cheeky like that, and through these holes as well. But yeah, you can put a sheet of cardboard or hessian over the top of them in their kind of worm bed with all their organic matter. And that stops them from kind of going up the sides and disappearing off through the holes. Yeah, and you start all that off in the bottom box, say, and as that one fills, or as the next box fills, you could add another box, leave the stuff in the bottom to start to sort of break down a little bit further, and yeah, just keep adding boxes as you need to for more organic matter and more worms. Yeah, so the worms will do the moving themselves once they've finished. So you're kind of you're keeping on moving the worms around, and you keep on adding boxes and adding organic matter, and the worms will sort themselves out, basically. So yeah, like I said, I've got this as a PDF. I'm going to stop the share, and I hope that worked for you all. Yeah, so it's not, you don't need a very big space. I haven't got a wormery to hand here, but we're basically talking about boxes that are, they could be sort of, 50 centimeters long by 25 centimeters wide. It could be very small boxes, basically. Yeah, but you can do that in pretty much any small space, even on a balcony, for example. And like I said, if you are able to then move that sort of stuff that the worms are created into another compost heap and mix it in with other stuff, then great. If you want to explore making things like the liquid feed and liquid verted, sort of the compost tea extraction, I'll try and find some videos on that as well that we can share in the group space. Or if you're working with a very small space, then you can just use the stuff that worms are created, as Louise does, directly into the beds that you're growing in. So yeah, any questions on that? And who thinks I might give it a go? Excellent. Yeah, like I said, we've got a video on our YouTube channel. I think it's a two-parter video of Jenny making one of these. So you can use the worksheet, and you can watch the videos and go forth and wormery. Yeah, Rachel.
Do you have to make it out of plastic?
It's a material that's readily available, but you don't have to. You could make them sort of bespoke wood. If you have access to wooden boxes, for example, you could use wooden boxes. The important thing is that it's a lid that fits. Yeah, so they will escape if you give them an opportunity to do so. And plastic is just it's one of those things that is easily accessible. But yeah, no, I take your point. It's not the nicest thing to have in the garden necessarily. Paula.
Oh, I just lowered my hand because I had exactly the same question.
I mean, yeah, you could make it yourself out of wood if you feel like you're handy enough to do that.
Yeah. My only kind of worry with the wood, which is what I'm planning to use, is for the winter. I'm guessing plastic is warmer than wood, so would fleece still work as a way to kind of keep it warm during the winter? And I'm up north in Stockholm, so it gets quite cold.
I imagine it does. Yeah. Obviously I don't have any growing experience in the not very far not in Scotland, yes, but not in Stockholm. But yeah, I would imagine the fleece would do it. I think I want to look into that. I want to look into whether wormeries work much further north, and what's whether that's as an option for you. But yeah, do you know of anybody else using wormeries around you?
Indoors, but not outdoors.
I had a friend in Glasgow who had a wormery in his kitchen. I just thought that was mad. I'm sorry.
I won't do it. I'm not allowed to do it in the kitchen anyway, so I'm not the only person living here. But
right.
But I would like it to be outside. But yeah, the question is, would they survive with wood?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me know.
I think so. Yeah, I'm just thinking about wormeries in your kitchens now. I mean, that's it's doable, right? Like I said, I have a friend that's had a wormery in his kitchen for years. So I know people do that. And you could probably keep it quite contained.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But yeah, I want it to risk.
Okay. Any other kind of wormery, how to compost fast composting of food waste, Sarah?
Is it okay with transparent plastic? Or
and the ones that I've used have always been black. So that's a good question. I guess it would. Oh, and brought tea. Thank you. Thank thanks very much. Yeah, it would kind of have that greenhouse effect, wouldn't it? It would be it might not work so well. I think black is a bit of a more passive kind of color, dark sort of, yeah, not transparent basically. Yeah, I would think I would opt for not transparent. You might risk worms overheating, and they don't like that either. They like to be kept at sort of fairly ambient temperature. And they like it dark. That's a good point, says my husband. It's a really good. All right, I'm getting some extra advice here. Mound the worms up. Yes. Do you want to run this course? Okay, yeah. Anyway, what he said. mound the worms up to get them out, basically. And yeah, they'll kind of they want to get out to the light. They're always looking for the light. Wormcity.co.uk. Amazing. Want to see pictures of it, Louise? When you've if you feel up for it, post it to the chat. Yeah, afterwards. What else on composting? Who's got a bigger space that they can fit? I know Zoe has obviously various community gardens, but who's working with a bigger space and a composting system, or is thinking of already put in a composting system, or is going to? Got Rachel and Sarah. Rachel, have you got a composting system, Rachel?
Yeah, so I've got like a 2-bin system, you know, so that I can turn it and stuff. But what I've been I tried to experiment a couple of times this year with hot composting. You know, where you do it in like 18 days. We tried that one.
Go on, explain to everybody what you've been doing.
So it's quite like you have to be specific about the amounts that you put in. You're supposed to do it in like a cubic meter, sorry. And then you're specific about the greens and browns. And then you have to turn it every other day, basically. You'd leave it 2 days, then you turn it every other day, and then you're supposed to have amazing compost in 18 days. But I tried it twice and did not have amazing compost in 18 days. So, but I'm still going to keep trying it because I think it would be amazing if you could actually. Because I had the reason I tried it is because I had a lot of bindweed and stuff that had gone to seed, which I've also tried like soaking them to make weed tea out of it and then putting that in the cold composting system. I'm just trying to find a way of dealing with weeds that have gone to seed, basically. So that's why.
Yeah. I haven't done the hot composting system myself, but I know people that have. And yeah, it is, as you say, it's being specific about the
kind of... Have they done it successfully?
Yeah, my friend Andrew, he was doing a mixture of specifically wood chip and grass cuttings, and layering up wood chip and grass cuttings. That's all he was using, and turning it on a regular basis. It was also quite insulated as well. The bay itself was quite insulated. Yeah, and I don't think it was quite 18 days, but it was certainly faster than most composts. For your weeds, though, drowning is I think the best way to deal with kind of nasty pernicious weeds, like bindweed. Yeah, like in buckets of water or a tank. But
and if they've gone to seed, though, are there particular seeds that need to be drowned for a particular amount of time? Or... Well,
I mean, I would never use the organic matter part of that ever again, but you can use the liquid as a sort of...
But what would you do with the organic matter then?
That's a good question.
The sludge that's
sludge, yeah.
The stinky, horrible, slimy sludge.
Feed it to the worms. Yeah, no, that's yeah. That could work.
Do you reckon they'd go for it?
Yeah, they might not like it very much, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would avoid put. I mean, when I have weeds, I just have a weed heap where I have that they have a space to do their own thing. And I just don't use that organic matter that they've, that the weeds have created. So yeah, I've got a weed heap and a wormery system and a separate compost heap. But yeah, the weeds that I don't want back in the garden they've got their own place to live. They're not allowed out, kind of thing. Be interesting to see what happens with that area in years to come, I suppose. Yeah, it's very nettly and docky at the moment. Anne, did you have your hand up a moment ago?
Yeah, I got one of those black polystyrene hot composters last year in my enthusiasm, and then got really impatient with it because it, again, like you said, you've got to have specific quantities. And the other thing that I didn't appreciate the first time round I tried is that you do, when it says cut it up small, you need to cut it up small because it doesn't like. And my first attempt went putrid. So I've also got 2 bins that I have with a gap in between because I haven't got the energy to turn them. But what I do is I fish out the stuff at the bottom, and then I mix it with horse muck and have a sort of third pile in the middle. So I kind of do it like that. But with the hot composter, I'm on my second try that's gone better now. And my hot composter said it's going to be ready in 90 days, but I haven't found that. I've only got the small one, but I still don't really have enough to feed it, but largely because of the chopping arrangements, because it's it's quite a time commitment chopping everything up really small. And I don't have enough just from the kitchen. There's only 2 of us, but obviously all my veg green, I don't, try and put all the greenery and stuff. And I get the local rag, the local newspaper, so I've got a shredder, so I use that for my brown or cardboard from work. And then you have to put a bit of wood chip in, and I'm getting a better result now. But when I get it off, you get a nice liquid feed, which you just dilute in 10. That seems to be quite nice. But when I if I take it out and it doesn't look ready, I still spread it because it's kind of ready enough, and it just rots down on the bed. So I spread it on the beds where I'm not going to be putting seedlings or anything that's going to struggle with big pieces, because it will. So it's a bit like a sort of compost mulch, and it seems to do all right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you don't wait until it's completely broken down, basically.
I wait for the 3 months, and then I never get this lovely brown crumbly stuff, or I haven't yet. Yeah. Sometimes I get bits that look a bit like it, but maybe I'm a bit impatient, and I also have no sense of time at all. So I probably, yeah. So if it looks okay, I might put it back in again. If it isn't okay, I'll put it back in again on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm, it's very much a work in progress, and I'm just learning as I'm hoping eventually I'll get this beautiful black stuff when I've really sussed it out in a few years' time.
Yeah. I think what it is more time, actually.
Yeah, I think it is.
To get the crumbly black stuff. I mean, you can obviously go and use what you've made directly into the garden, and it's going to be fine. But if you want the crumbly,
really good stuff,
the really nice dark crumbly stuff, then it's I mean,
you just got to wait longer.
It's a year at least, a year at least. You mentioned mulches there, and that was another question that came up in one of the answers anyway to my question, was using mulches in different ways. So who was it that asked that question or raised that point? Was it Rachel? No, it wasn't Rachel. Can't remember who it was now. It was Catherine, who has to stop talking but has got her hand up. So yeah, mulches. I wanted to get some clarity, Catherine, if that's possible, on exactly what you meant by that. Or if you're not able to talk, that's also fine. Yeah, but my interpretation of that is we're talking about a mixture of different things. We're talking about sort of fabrics or materials or types of organic matter. Oh, basics, okay. blocking weeds, feeding it, or both. Yeah, okay. And then also we're talking about living mulches, so using green manures. And while we've been talking, I've been searching images on my on Ecosia, which is the browser that the browser that I use to try and find a really good infographic of lots of different green manure crops, and I can't bloody find anything at all, which is really irritating me. I found some, but they're just really tiny, and then if I was to expand them to the same size as this screen, then it would go really blurry. So you just kind of put it on me talking at this point. So obviously one thing that you all talked about was when we had the go round was that you're really looking forward to thinking about what you want to plant, and maybe even getting planting. But obviously it's actually November, so short of putting in some shrubs and herbaceous perennials, you know, sort of starting to think about what you're going to be growing next season, it feels tantalizingly close, but also ever so far away, because yeah, we're going to have to do winter first. But now is a really good time to be thinking about covering your ground, and covering your ground with things that are going to be beneficial in different ways. So mulching is obviously what we do at this time of year. So there's different things that you can use, and Anne was just talking there about using a sort of, you know, compost mulch with something that is kind of semi broken down. So not putting raw organic matter onto the beds, but using an organic matter that is kind of almost there, and then you can cover that. I think what I would do at that point is cover that with a cardboard or sheep's fleece. Does anybody use sheep's fleece at all? A few nods and quite a few shakings of heads. So maybe you don't live in an area where you can readily access sheep's fleece, but it's a really good thing to use, because it's a kind of slow release nitrogen in itself. So it's great for as a sort of, you know, organic mulch that you don't have to even remove from the beds. So yeah, if you were going to use some sort of semi-broken down compost, that could also be if you're able to access some manure, some horse manure, but it's not 7 years old. It's kind of, you know, still a bit strawy and still a bit sawdusty and still a bit pooey, basically. You know, there's nothing to stop you from putting that on your bed. It still will be okay, but you should cover it and insulate it, and give it a sort of help it to heat up so that it speeds up the breaking down process. And some good materials to do that with are, as I said, sheep's fleece. It's nice and insulative. It is an organic matter in itself, and will become part of the kind of layers of soil that you're creating. Cardboard, which Catherine, I think it was mentioned, when you put that down, you attract loads of worms. So that's also going to really help with the kind of breaking down compost kind of process, and the worms obviously do the job of pulling all that lovely organic matter into the soil and mixing it up. And sort of third one that is okay but least preferred is black plastic. Black plastic obviously doesn't have any organic matter properties itself. It's not really very nice, and you know, Rachel's already raised the point, you know, do we have to use plastic in the garden for the wormeries? No, you don't, but yeah, black plastic is still really insulative, and will help to kind of keep the heat in, and help to heat the compost up that you've spread on the beds or added to your bed, and again, we'll kind of encourage sort of microorganisms to work harder, which is what you're kind of looking for in the soils we talked about last time. We've got the soil food web and lots of different microorganisms that live in the soil, and the warmer it is, the faster and harder they're going to work for you, basically. So I guess it in order of kind of preference: sheep's fleece, cardboard, and black plastic. And another one that folk use at this time of year is wood chip. Again, if you're in an urban area, maybe this is a bit easier to obtain than sheep's fleeces. Basically, any farmer who has sheep, by the way, will they'll have a pile of kind of offcuts of sheep fleece that they'll be very happy to give you. You just need to phone a farmer. And but wood chip is quite an easy one to get hold of in an urban area, because obviously there's lots of tree work to do, and lots of urban arboriculturalists. What you need to be really, really, really careful of, as you probably already know, is not to use any wood chip that has come from a conifer kind of tree. Yeah, there's a little bit of sort of jury's out on this one, but I'm personally pretty steadfast around this, is that you should not be using sort of any leylandii kind of cuttings, anything that's come from sort of Sitka spruce, any chipped up Christmas trees, anything like that, because they are acidic. So they're going to, you add those as a mulch to your soil, and you're adding acidity into your soil. And unless you've got like a super alkaline soil, that is basically just not a good idea. And yeah, I remember going to a community garden once in Glasgow, where they'd been really struggling to get crops growing in two of their raised beds. And they asked me to come in because it needed to be to sort of troubleshoot it, kind of thing. So the first thing we did was kind of, have a look at what they were growing in. And it looked sort of soily on top, but you got like 10 centimeters under the surface, and it was basically conifer wood chip. There's like nothing else in there apart from conifer wood chip. It's like, well, that's your problem. You're sowing things, they're getting started, then they're putting their roots down, they're trying to find nutrients, and they're just coming against sort of conifer wood chip and acidity. So yeah, avoid using conifer, but if you can get your arboriculturalist tree surgeon volunteer to guarantee that your wood chip is coming from native broadleaf or deciduous trees, then great, brilliant. There was leaf mulch. That's another good one, actually. Yeah, using leaf mulch is another really useful kind of resource that again, going around, if you're in an urban area, then most cities have trees. I remember when I lived in Glasgow, I used to sort of bemoan at this time of year the sort of organic matter resource that was basically clogging up all the gutters and just getting washed into the city's sewerage system. Oh, it's pressure in the waiting room again. And yeah, and wouldn't it be great if we could just scoop all that up and put it into lovely compost heaps, and add it straight into our raised beds, kind of thing. So leaf mulch is brilliant. It's ideal if you can leave it, obviously, for a year to break down, so you're not just putting fresh leaves or fresh brown leaves that have fallen off the trees onto your beds. Although I know people that do that, and it doesn't seem to do much harm. Again, avoid using conifer, and another tree to avoid using the leaves of is beech. And that's because beech is allelopathic, which is one of my favorite words, which means stops other things from growing, basically. So if you ever walked in a beech woodland and wondered why there was no ground flora, I mean, I have a small beech woodland at home here. The beech trees are about 100 years old. So it's girths this big, and they're huge and tall and glorious, but very little ground flora. Nothing else really grows in a beech woodland, and that is because the beech tree inhibits the growth of other plants around it. It sends out chemicals, basically, that stop other things from growing. So the leaves will have a similar kind of action. So beech leaves take a long time to break down, for a start, but they'll also will be allelopathic. So adding that to your leaf mulch, or using that as a soil mulch, is basically not a great idea. And we'll stop there and see if you've got any questions before I start talking about green manures. So just to recap quickly, the kind of mulches that I've been describing are ground cover mulches that are organic in nature, ideally, apart from the black plastic, which is way down the list. Are organic in nature, ideally, will add structure and will add nutrients to your soil. Will be beneficial at the same time as providing a ground cover that will prevent weeds from growing, and at the same time as kind of keeping your soil warm so that you're ready to plant again in the spring. And that's another good reason to sort of mulch at this time of year, because you don't want your soil to drop too cold and for all that lovely microbial activity to stop altogether. So we've covered things like, I've covered things like sheep's fleeces, cardboard, leaf mulch, manures of different types, semi-broken down compost, and then finally black plastic. Has anyone got anything they want to ask about that before I waffle on about green manures? No? Is anybody using any sort of mulches like that at the moment that would like to talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it? Go, Anne, go on, jump in.
What, the green manure mulches?
No, the other mulches. Before I go into green manures.
Yeah, I use quite a lot of I found cardboard absolutely fantastic, because it breaks down so quickly, and sometimes I'll put a layer of horse muck, or I've got a friend who gives me her rabbit hutch bits and pieces, so I layer it and then put more cardboard on. But it's great.
Yeah, cardboard is really good, and it's very readily accessible in pretty much anywhere that you might happen to live. If you've got like big space to cover, bike shops are a really good place to hit up for cardboard, because obviously they get bikes in huge cardboard boxes. So yeah, there's nice massive sheets of cardboard ready to go down in big areas. But if you're working with small spaces, it doesn't matter so much. Anybody else using mulches at the moment? Yeah, Sarah, is that a hand?
I had a question for the cardboard. Is it okay when they have ink on them, or?
Yeah, better not.
Okay.
Better not. And the same with cardboard and a compost heap or a wormery, actually. So cereal boxes, no. Whereas sort of plain brown cardboard is fine. So yeah, the most ink free the better. Yeah. Any other mulching related comments at this point? Okay, on to some green manures then. Who's already using green manures in any way, shape, or form? Rachel, go on. Do you want to talk about it? Tell us what you know.
I spent a bit of time today putting in field beans, planting field beans just today. That's it.
Is that the first time you've used something that comes under the green manure category?
I've used field beans before once in my garden, and also clover. So I've used them a couple of times.
Great. And so what kind of impact have you seen? Do you think? What kind of impact have you seen, do you think?
Well, the impact is, I guess, that there's something growing in the soil. It's hard, isn't it? Because I didn't test my soil before, and then afterwards, it's like an unknown thing that you're comparing against. Like, what would it have been like if I hadn't put it in? But yeah, I mean, I just really think it's good to always have stuff growing in the soil. So that's why I've done it, and I like the idea of fixing nitrogen and stuff like that. So
keeping living roots in the soil, adding nutrients, and
then doing the old chop and drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, So I haven't done it very scientifically, but
Yeah.
I've done it and it seems cool.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean that's good enough reasons really. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what mulching and using any kind of mulch, as well as the living mulches is all about. It's like keeping the soil covered and making sure you've got something on and in the soil all the time. Anyone else using green manures at the moment? Louise?
Last year I used, I can never pronounce it. Is it Facelia?
Oh,
Facelia.
Yeah, love Facelia.
And
Just
I
think
used that.
Cecilia.
Facelia. Because
Then
it's
sing a little
really
song.
beautiful with those like really nice little lilac-y flowers.
Yeah.
And so I put it, I just put it between where I was growing my garlic. And actually I noticed when I pulled the garlic up this year that I didn't have a lot of the sort of like, I was really worried I was getting white onion rot
White rot.
last the year before. But this year when I pulled them up, I didn't have any of that. We seem to be happier. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I must admit I haven't put the seeds down this year as I've grown my garlic, but I'm not sure if I'm too late for that now, because I think is it September, October you're supposed to do it. Or do you think I could try it?
I
I've still
mean,
got some seeds.
you could sow the Facelia next year and it would still be fine.
Yeah, in
The
the
thing about
spring.
sowing Facelia at this time of year is that it probably won't reach its flowering stage,
Mm.
unless you live in a super mild area where you're not going to get any frost at all. Yeah, but that's so not the case for me. If I was going to sow Facelia now, and I've got plenty still growing actually all over the garden. That's kind of, yeah, because I haven't had a proper frost here yet. Still got it flowering actually in the garden. It's amazing. But yeah, if you sow it now, it would create cover, but it wouldn't reach its flowering stage. But you can sow it in March, and you can have that growing. I've also had Facelia and garlic growing together every year pretty much. Yeah, it's a lovely combination actually. It's very nice to do that.
I had loads of people frowning at me saying, "Oh, you shouldn't grow anything with garlic because it'll take." And I was like, "No, I'm not listening to you." They just did anyway,
Yeah,
and it looked lovely.
allotment people, honestly. I mean, not all of them, obviously, not all allotment people. And you also had your hand up about for green manures. What are you using?
I used red clover last year. This year I've used a lot of white mustard, which is really really enjoy that because it comes up so quickly, and then it rots down again so quickly. So sometimes then you can use it as a salad if you want to have a bit as well. And it's just brilliant because it covers it because it's just so quick.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. So I've got some that I've left, so it's going quite tall now. But I've got some, and then my dog unfortunately likes to sit on my raised bed, so some of it just gets squashed by her, which is fine. But but I've got some Facelia which I was going to put in next year. So I'm very excited by that.
Yeah. So in general, principles with green manures is as we kind of mentioned, to keep soil covered, and to feed the soil in different ways and to stimulate sort of constant microbial activity in the soil. So it's adding organic matter, and it's also adding a sort of fertilizer of some description. What a lot of people are sort of experimenting with is using green manure mixes. So not just using red clover and not just using Facelia and not just using buckwheat, but or kind of, you know, mustard leaf, but using a combination of all of those different things. And the reason being is because they'll have different actions, and they'll have a symbiotic relationships with each other. Yeah, I've actually got all mine here as it happens. Let's see what I've got. I haven't even looked at this for a little while. So this is a 500-gram bag of Facelia, right here. What else have I got in here? This is vetch. Whoops, before I spill it everywhere. So this is winter tares, it's called, but this is vetch. People know what vetch is? Come across vetch before? It's a legume. So it's also purple like the Facelia, but it's part, oops, Daisy, part of the legume family. And it has, you know, like peas and beans. It has kind of long tendril like plants and long leaves. And it produces purple flowers, and then after that it produces a pod. So it's another good nitrogen fixing green manure. So combining well with Phacelia. Do people know what the action of Phacelia actually is in the soil? So it's not, it doesn't actually fix nitrogen or anything like that. It helps to stabilize nutrients in the soil. That's its main purpose. So combining Phacelia with other green manure crops is super important, because on its own, Phacelia is working to stabilize nutrients that are already in the soil, but combining it with another green manure will mean that those two plants are kind of working together, kind of thing. So if I put in this one is bird's foot trefoil. There you go, bird's foot trefoil, which is another legume. I like my legumes. So growing that alongside the Phacelia will help the nitrogen that's being fixed by the bird's foot trefoil to be stabilized and held in place by the Phacelia. And let's see what it dropped down here. Classic crimson clover, more legumes. Got to be careful with the clovers because they do like to take over. They're not an annual. Oh, I've got seeds all over the bottom of this envelope. That's not great. I think it's probably the buckwheat seeds. Oh, such a nice seed. They're kind of triangular shapes, really nice. Yes, this is the only one that I've got that isn't a green manure. I mean, it isn't a legume apart from the Phacelia here. And yeah, the buckwheat is also just really good for kind of adding that structure into the soil, and that'll be kind of again be held in place, help hold in place the other nutrients that the legumes are fixing in. Yeah, and then generally speaking, you can do two methods to kind of, well, multiple methods actually for kind of dealing with your green manures once you want to plant in. So I had a whole area that was mostly clover last year, and I tarped that off. So I used black plastic and covered the clover with black plastic, which killed the clover off completely. And when I lifted the black plastic off, it was, you couldn't tell that there had been clover there previously, but it all sort of rotted down and become as one with the soil, which is rather good. Rachel mentioned the chop and drop method. Do people know what that means? Yes, no, not really. Okay, so chop and drop is when you kind of don't pull the plants out, but you would cut them at ground level. So you'd let them grow and cut them right down, and then rip them up and drop the ripped up organic matter down low, so onto the soil. So Phacelia, for example, can grow up to sort of knee height, sometimes a little bit taller. It can also look like it's going to take over completely, and because it self-seeds, it often does. But you can throughout the year cut it back and chop up the organic matter that you've cut back and use that as a mulch throughout the year, which is what I do with it. So I basically have Phacelia growing everywhere, which is amazing because it looks beautiful. But I use it throughout the year as a kind of living mulch, but also a chop and drop mulch. So I'll cut it back when I think it's taking over an area too much, and layer it in between the different crops that I've got growing, which might also be helping to suppress something like a clover that's maybe getting a little bit out of hand. And you can do the same with the vetch and the bird's foot trefoil, because they also can grow quite long and sort of, you know, a bit rambly. So you can constantly cut those back and use those in the chop and drop kind of method as well. Yes, Anne.
When you talk about growing, like what I can't remember, somebody was saying about the garlic and the Phacelia, and you're saying you've got Phacelia in between everything.
Yeah.
How how close is it? How is it? It's not competing, no.
No, it just it doesn't want to compete. That's what I find with Phacelia.
So how so is it literally amongst your crop?
I broadcast sow it in amongst everything, pretty much. You don't need very much for it to sort of to have an impact. So you can do quite a gentle broadcast sow, but I do just scatter the seeds. Liberally in between everything. It's just a bit yeah, I'm sure Louise's allotment committee probably wouldn't agree with that approach at all. But it seems to work for me. And as I said, using more than one green manure. So don't just sow your mustard leaf, and don't just sow your buckwheat, and don't just sow your Phacelia and your bird's foot trefoil. But I've got some friends down south who kind of say we're like seven green manure seeds. Seven seed mix is kind of the magic number. But you need to find what works for your soil. And the reason for this sort of 7 is diversity, really. So diversity in kind of the different plants that are growing, in the different actions each of those will have, the different rooting systems, how deep the root goes, the different sort of root structures, and how they interact with different organisms in the soil. So the more diversity you've got, the more resilience you've got. And the more kind of microbial activity you're likely to foster through having a diverse range of kind of seeds and mixes in your soils. Who asked that question? Catherine said, where do you get your seeds from? So these ones, just make this box go away. These ones come from sow seeds, basically. It's a tricky one. I was getting all my green manure seeds from the seed cooperative, which were people using the seed cooperative until this year. You heard of it? Maybe yes, no, yeah. Seed cooperative went sort of folded this year, unfortunately. They did sell sort of green manure seeds in bulk, but unfortunately they kind of went bust earlier this year for various different reasons, which is a real shame, because my Phacelia and my buckwheat definitely come from the seed cooperative, but the other ones I had to go sort of to stockists that I wasn't really so familiar with to access. So this is sowseeds.co.uk. That's for the clovers and the bird's foot trefoil and the vetch. That's all the legumes there. I just realised it's 28 minutes past 8. That means we're almost done for this session. Gosh, I could talk for ages about green manures. So yeah, now it's still not too late to sow green manures. If you want to, you'll still get them in. Some of them will manage over winter, but you can equally sow them in the spring. And use them as a permanent ground cover throughout the year. It doesn't just have to be a winter thing, which is how people think of it. I think that they use the green manures as a winter soil cover, whereas you could use it throughout the year as a sort of permanently enriching the soil. There's a project called Oxton Organics, which is, I think, in Oxfordshire. Oxton's so who knows. Is Oxton in Oxfordshire? I think it might be. Sounds like it should be anyway. Oxton Organics, so there's a woman called Jane Arnold there. It's a big market garden project, big CSA and Community Supported Agriculture box scheme. And she's been doing some really interesting experimental things with green manures for many years. And it's really worth looking at her social media, because she posts her kind of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and the results she's getting from some of the trials that she's been doing. So that's Oxton Organics, and I'll post a link to that in our group space as well. Okay, before we finish, has anybody got any green manure related questions or comments? Sarah, yes.
I had a question more for, so let's say you were to cover the ground, could you cover with just with the cardboard and then on top put the plastic just for the winter and then take off the plastic, or just because basically it would be lots of cardboard and then it's easier to have a big plastic that's just covering everything on top?
Yeah, you could, although your cardboard would do the job just as well. You would, there's not really any need to take off to have the cardboard
Okay.
with plastic on top. I suppose the plastic would help the cardboard to actually break down, because what I end up doing is taking a lot of the cardboard off and putting that into my compost heap in the spring. That hasn't started breaking down goes into the compost heap.
Okay.
But I guess
But
if you
the
covered it with
cardboard can blow, doesn't the cardboard blow away if you don't hold
yeah,
it
you have to
down?
wait. You have to weight it down. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So big lengths of wood and bricks will do that quite easily. But yeah, it can look quite messy. So depending on where you are and how much you care about that kind of thing, and whether other people care, I suppose this is the other thing about allotment sites, particularly. I'm thinking, yeah, cardboard can and does look quite messy, and you got to keep on top of it. Yeah, so yeah, that'd be interesting experiment, Sarah. You could try the sort of cardboard and then plastic, and yeah, and I don't know if we'll still have access to the Mighty Networks group space going forward. I could ask Gemma that because it'd be quite nice to continue to use that space as a place to sort of share your ongoing successes and challenges through next year, rather than just like coming to the end of this course and going, that's that, thanks, bye. Yeah, because obviously, as I said, it's November now. Most of what you're going to be putting into practice will be next spring, won't it, onwards? So yeah, I don't know how that works, but I can find out, because I think it'd be nice if you're all up for that. Sharing pictures. Okay.
How do I go to tea glass station?
What's that, Prashant?
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to ask anything. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. No worries. Okay. Well, it's gone 8:30, so I guess we'll say goodbye for tonight. I'll post links to the kind of conversations, things that we've been talking about. I'm just gonna mute Prashant. He's talking about trains. Yeah, I'll post links to the things that we've covered this evening in the group space, and I want to encourage you all to take photos of what you're up to, and post them into the group space as well, so we can all kind of applaud each other. I love that. It's not like, is it, on that? It's applaud. Hurrah. It's very good. But yeah, but for now, thanks everybody for coming along this evening and bearing with me. At least technology worked this time, huh? And any other questions that come up out of this, post them in the chat. And I think next time we'll cover things like planting plans, companion planting, and seed saving. But it will also be our last session. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Then. Okay, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.